Hello, hello, hello. I wrote the song Shout. Yeah, you know you. And then I turned the TV down, 'cause I thought I heard a...
From soulful serenades to a shocking prison sentence, Ronald Isley's voice defined 7 decades of music history until one jaw-dropping choice sent the R&B legend from the stage to a cell. How did the man behind Shout and Between the Sheets fall so far? Stick around as we unravel the rise, ruin, and redemption of a musical icon.
Shout would be the first song in the 50s.
For 7 decades, they've been the soundtrack to our lives. The voices behind timeless classics like Shout, Twist and Shout, and Between the Sheets.
You know, it was the beginning of our career and the first hit record for the Isley Brothers.
The Isley Brothers, architects of soul, pioneers of funk, and one of the most influential groups in music history.
You do a gig, you pay your taxes. Nobody say, did you pay taxes in North Carolina? No, none of the entertainers did.
From church choirs in Cincinnati to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, their journey has been nothing short of legendary. But behind the smooth harmonies and electrifying performances lies a story far more complex. A tale of triumphs and tragedies, innovation and betrayal. And for Ronald Isley, the unmistakable voice that carried the group through its most successful eras, that journey would take a shocking turn that no one saw coming. How does a music icon with a career spanning 7 decades end up behind bars at age 65? What led one of the most recognized voices in R&B to risk everything? His freedom, his legacy, his family, over unpaid taxes. And how did the man known to fans as Mr. Biggs handle the humbling reality of a prison cell? This is the story of Ronald Isley's dramatic fall from grace. From the heights of musical royalty to federal prison inmate number 38,699-060. The story of how one of music's most enduring voices found himself silenced not by time or changing tastes, but by his own choices and the unforgiving arm of the law. Join me as we uncover the rise, fall, and redemption of Ronald Isley, a cautionary tale of fame, fortune, and the price of financial negligence in the unforgiving world of the music industry. Cincinnati, Ohio, 1941. In the predominantly black neighborhood of Lincoln Heights, a musical dynasty was taking root. O'Kelly Isley Sr. and Sally Bernice Isley welcomed their third son into the world, Ronald Isley. Born into a deeply religious household where music and faith were inseparable, young Ronald was immersed in gospel from his first breath. The Isley home resonated with the sounds of worship and harmony.
In the early 1900s, the West End was a booming black community, home to more than 25,000 families. Indoor plumbing was a luxury that few could afford, and none of the houses built for black residents included those so-called luxuries.
A training ground for what would become one of music's most influential families. Our house was filled with music, Ronald recalled in a rare 1994 interview. Every Sunday, we'd be in church from morning till night. My father was a choir director, and my mother played piano. Music wasn't just something we did. It was who we were. The Isley children, O'Kelly Jr., Rudolph, Ronald, and later Vernon, formed their first vocal group not in a recording studio or talent show, but in their local church. Under their parents' guidance, they learned to blend their voices in perfect harmony, mastering the call and response techniques that would later become their signature. We started singing at funerals, Ronald once shared. As children, we'd sing at services, and people would be so moved, they'd be crying. That's when I first understood the power of music, how it could touch people's souls. These formative experiences shaped not just Ronald's extraordinary vocal abilities, but his understanding of music as something sacred, something transformative. Even among his talented siblings, Ronald stood out. His voice, a remarkable instrument capable of soaring falsettos, tender croons, and raw emotional power, marked him as special from an early age. But the Isley family's musical journey was not without tragedy. In 1955, just as the brothers were beginning to gain recognition beyond their local community, 13-year-old Vernon Isley was killed in a bicycle accident. The loss devastated the family, nearly ending their musical aspirations before they truly began. "Losing Vernon nearly broke us," Ronald later reflected. "He was so young, so talented. For a while, none of us wanted to sing. It felt wrong without him." But encouraged by their parents to honor Vernon's memory through music, the remaining brothers, O'Kelly Jr., Rudolph, and Ronald, regrouped. Their grief became fuel for their determination, their loss a reminder of how precious and fleeting life could be. In 1957, with Ronald's voice now taking center stage, the brothers recorded their first professional song, Angels Cried.
From sight, I was alone in the night.
Though it failed to chart nationally, it represented an important first step in what would become an extraordinary musical journey. Few could have predicted that these three brothers from Cincinnati, forged in gospel and tempered by tragedy, would go on to create a musical legacy spanning 7 decades. Fewer still could have imagined that the youngest of the trio, the boy with the golden voice, would one day find that voice echoing off prison walls. But before the fall came the rise, a meteoric ascent that would change American music forever. America, 1959. Eisenhower was in the White House. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and on radio stations across the country, a new sound was emerging, one that would bridge racial divides and lay the groundwork for rock and roll. The Isley Brothers were struggling to find their place in this changing landscape. After moving to New York City to pursue their dreams, they'd faced rejection after rejection. Their early recordings had failed to capture the public's imagination, and money was running out.
Got my woman. I feel alright.
Shout burst onto the scene like a musical revolution. Inspired by the call and response techniques of the church and the raw energy of a Jackie Wilson performance they'd witnessed, the Isleys created something entirely new. A song that built from a whisper to a scream, demanding listeners participate in its infectious joy. Released in 1959, Shout only reached number 47 on the Billboard charts, but its cultural impact far exceeded its chart position. The song became a staple at parties, weddings, and celebrations, anywhere people gathered to experience joy together. "We took the energy of the church and brought it to the dance floor," Ronald explained in a 1995 interview. "That's what made Shout special. It wasn't just a song, it was an experience." The brothers followed Shout with another energetic hit, Twist and Shout, in 1962. Once again, they created a song that transcended the traditional boundaries of R&B, reaching number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song would later gain even greater fame when covered by the Beatles in 1963, introducing the Isleys' music to an international audience and cementing their place in music history. But even as their songs reached new audiences, the brothers faced a common challenge for black artists of the era: creative and financial control. In a bold move that would redefine their career, the Isleys founded their own record label in 1964, T-Neck Records. Named after their home in Teaneck, New Jersey, the label represented something revolutionary: black artists taking control of their own destiny in an industry that had historically exploited them. "We wanted to own our music," Ronald stated simply in a later interview. "We wanted to control our future." This entrepreneurial spirit would become a defining characteristic of the Isleys' career, and perhaps, ironically, set the stage for the financial complications that would later lead to Ronald's imprisonment. The Isleys' gamble paid off in 1969 with the release of It's Your Thing, a funk-infused declaration of independence that reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and won them a Grammy Award. The song's message of personal freedom mirrored the brothers' own journey toward artistic autonomy. It's Your Thing marked the beginning of a new chapter for the Isleys. No longer were they just hit makers. They were now innovators, businessmen, and pioneers charting their own course in a rapidly changing industry. For Ronald Isley, this period established him as one of music's most distinctive voices. His smooth, soulful delivery could convey everything from exuberant joy to intimate desire, making him the perfect conduit for the group's evolving sound. Little did he know that the same independent spirit that drove their artistic success would later entangle him in a web of financial mismanagement that would lead all the way to a federal prison cell. But before that fall would come the highest peaks of their career, a golden age of innovation and influence that would cement the Isley Brothers' place among music's immortals. The 1970s marked a transformative period for American music, and the Isley Brothers were at the forefront of this evolution. No longer just the trio that had electrified audiences with Shout, the group expanded to include younger brothers Ernie and Marvin Isley, along with brother-in-law Chris Jasper. In 1973, the expanded group released 3+3, an album that would redefine their sound and catapult them to new heights of commercial success. The album's lead single, That Lady, showcased their evolution. Ronald's silky vocals floating over Ernie's psychedelic guitar lines created something entirely new in R&B. That Lady reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, introducing the Isleys to a new generation of listeners and demonstrating their remarkable ability to evolve with the times without losing their essential identity. The album also featured their soulful rendition of Seals and Crofts' Summer Breeze, transforming the folk rock original into a lush R&B masterpiece. This ability to reinterpret songs from across the musical spectrum would become another Isley trademark. Throughout the 1970s, the hits continued. Live It Up, Fight the Power, Harvest for the World, and Footsteps in the Dark, each one showcasing their evolving sound while maintaining the soulful core that had defined them from the beginning. Ronald, now in his 30s, had grown from the young vocalist behind Shout into one of music's most versatile and respected singers. His falsetto could send shivers down listeners' spines, while his smooth baritone could convey intimate emotion unlike any other voice in R&B. The early 1980s brought another evolution with the release of Between the Sheets in 1983, a sensual slow jam that would become one of their most enduring hits, and years later, one of the most sampled songs in hip-hop history.
I wanna keep you here, laying next to me.
Between the Sheets exemplified the Quiet Storm sound, smooth, sophisticated R&B perfect for late nights and romantic encounters. Ronald's performance on the track showcased his unparalleled ability to convey desire and passion through subtle vocal nuances. By this point, Ronald Isley had established himself as not just a great singer, but a true vocal stylist, instantly recognizable and impossible to imitate. His influence could be heard in countless younger artists, from Michael Jackson to R. Kelly. But as the 1980s progressed, challenges emerged. The music industry was changing rapidly, with new trends and technologies reshaping how music was created and consumed. Internal tensions within the group were growing, and tragedy was on the horizon. In 1986, Eley Isley Jr., one of the founding members and Ronald's older brother, died of a heart attack at age 48. The loss devastated Ronald, who had performed alongside Eley for nearly 30 years. Losing Eley was like losing a part of myself, Ronald later reflected. We'd been singing together since we were children. His voice was always there, harmonizing with mine, and suddenly it was gone. The group would face another significant change when Rudolph Isley left in 1989 to pursue a career in Christian ministry, leaving Ronald as the last remaining member of the original trio. Despite these personal and professional challenges, Ronald refused to let the Isley Brothers' legacy fade. With younger brother Ernie by his side, he continued to record and perform, adapting to changing musical landscapes while maintaining the soulful essence that had always defined their sound. But as Ronald fought to keep the music alive, financial troubles were brewing behind the scenes. Troubles that would eventually lead to one of the most shocking falls from grace in R&B history. Behind the glamour of sold-out concerts and platinum records, the music industry has always had a darker side, one where financial mismanagement, exploitation, and tax problems have derailed even the most successful careers. For Ronald Isley, the seeds of financial trouble were planted long before they became public knowledge. Despite decades of hit records and worldwide fame, the path from musical success to financial stability was far from straightforward. Many artists, especially those who found fame before the era of financial literacy, struggle with money management, explains music industry accountant Marcus Thompson. They're focused on creating art, not reading contracts or understanding tax codes. Add to that the lifestyle expectations that come with fame, and you have a recipe for financial disaster. For the Isley Brothers, their financial situation was particularly complex. As pioneers who had established their own record label in the 1960s, they had more control over their music than many of their contemporaries, but also more responsibility. By the 1990s, Ronald Isley had become accustomed to a lifestyle of luxury. Multiple homes, a fleet of luxury cars, designer clothes, and extravagant jewelry had become standard for the man who was increasingly styling himself as Mr. Biggs, a smooth, sophisticated character he portrayed in music videos with R. Kelly. This larger-than-life persona reflected Ronald's status in the industry, but it also created financial pressures. The first public sign of financial trouble came in 1997 when Ronald Isley filed for bankruptcy. The bankruptcy filing revealed a complicated financial picture, one that included significant debts to the Internal Revenue Service. According to court documents, Ronald owed millions in back taxes, some dating back to the 1970s. Despite the bankruptcy proceedings and clear awareness of his tax obligations, prosecutors would later allege that Ronald continued to live lavishly while failing to pay current taxes. From 1997 to 2002, they claimed he earned over $12 million but failed to pay the required taxes on that income. The government would eventually allege that Ronald had engaged in a pattern of deception, using shell companies and cash transactions to hide income, putting assets in others' names to shield them from collection, and continuing to live an extravagant lifestyle while claiming inability to pay his tax debts. June 2004. The music world was stunned by breaking news. Ronald Isley, the legendary voice of the Isley Brothers, had been indicted on multiple counts of tax evasion. Federal prosecutors today announced a 5-count indictment against R&B singer Ronald Isley, charging him with tax evasion and willful failure to file tax returns, reported one Los Angeles news station. If convicted on all counts, Isley could face up to 26 years in federal prison. For Ronald, now in his early 60s, the indictment came at a particularly challenging time. In 2004, he had suffered a stroke that left him with lingering health issues. Friends and family worried about how the stress of a federal prosecution would affect his recovery. Despite the serious charges, Ronald maintained his innocence. His legal team argued that any tax issues stem from poor financial management rather than criminal intent, a critical distinction in tax law. The trial began in October 2005 in Los Angeles federal court. For several weeks, jurors heard testimony about complex financial transactions, royalty payments, and the lifestyle of an R&B legend. Prosecutors presented evidence of luxury cars, including a Bentley leased in his tour manager's name shortly after declaring bankruptcy. They detailed cash payments for personal expenses and showed how income had been routed through various entities to obscure its source. Throughout the trial, Ronald maintained a dignified presence in the courtroom. Despite his health challenges, he attended every day, listening intently as his financial life was dissected and his character questioned. September 1st, 2006, the day of reckoning had arrived. Ronald Isley, now 65 years old and still dealing with the effects of his stroke, arrived at the federal courthouse in Los Angeles for sentencing. Supported by family members, he moved slowly but carried himself with the dignity that had been his hallmark throughout his career. Ronald himself addressed the court, expressing remorse and taking responsibility for his actions. "I never intended to deceive anyone," he told the judge. "But I recognize my mistakes and I accept the consequences. I only asked for the chance to continue performing and providing for my family." Then came the moment of truth. U.S. District Judge Dean Pregerson delivered the sentence, 3 years and 1 month in federal prison. The sentence sent shockwaves through the music community. For Ronald, the reality of imprisonment at his age was daunting. Beyond the loss of freedom, there were serious concerns about how prison would affect his health and whether his career could survive such a prolonged absence. On December 1st, 2006, Ronald Isley reported to the Federal Correctional Institution in Terre Haute, Indiana, becoming inmate number 38,699-060. The voice that had filled stadiums and created timeless classics was now confined to a federal prison cell. While Ronald served his sentence, the music world continued to acknowledge his extraordinary contributions. In 2007, while he was behind bars, the Isley Brothers were inducted into the Hollywood Rock Walk, a bittersweet honor that Ronald couldn't attend. For his family, especially his young wife Candy and their son Ronald Jr., born when Ronald Sr. was 63, the separation was painful. Regular visits to the prison became the new normal, with young Ronald Jr. growing up seeing his father only in the controlled environment of a prison visitation room. On April 13, 2010, after serving nearly 3.5 years, Ronald Isley was released from federal custody. At 68 years old, he emerged from prison a free man, older, wiser, and ready to reclaim his place in the music world. Just months after his release, Ronald returned to the stage, his voice remarkably unchanged by time or circumstance. If anything, his performances had gained new depth and emotion, each note now carrying the weight of experience, loss, and redemption. In 2013, Ronald and Ernie Isley released a new album, This Song Is For You, featuring collaborations with younger artists like Trey Songz. The album reached number 27 on the Billboard 200, proving that the Isley Brothers' appeal transcended generations. Even more remarkably, in 2021, at age 79, Ronald participated in a wildly popular versus battle with Earth, Wind and Fire that introduced the Isley Brothers' music to millions of new listeners through streaming platforms. The event became one of the most watched in the series' history, with over 1.1 million viewers tuning in. What we witnessed with that versus battle was extraordinary, notes cultural critic Dr. Jasmine Reynolds. Here was a man approaching 80 who had been performing since the 1950s, who had served time in federal prison, and he wasn't just relevant, he was triumphant. Younger viewers were in the comments asking, how is his voice still this good? The renewed interest in the Isley Brothers' catalog led to a streaming boom, with classic tracks like Between the Sheets and Footsteps in the Dark finding new audiences through social media platforms like TikTok and through samples and songs by contemporary artists. Financially, Ronald appears to have learned from his past mistakes. While he continues to live comfortably, friends say he has adopted a more measured approach to his finances, with proper management and accounting practices in place. The most important thing for someone who's had tax issues is transparency and compliance going forward, explains financial advisor Rebecca Torres. Many celebrities who face these problems have successfully rebuilt by implementing proper financial controls and working with reputable professionals. Perhaps most importantly, Ronald's post-prison years have been marked by a renewed focus on family. His relationship with his son, Ronald Jr., who was just a toddler when his father went to prison, has become central to his life. My son is my everything, Ronald shared in a 2019 interview. When I was away, I promised myself that if I got another chance, I would be the best father I could be. Every day, I worked to keep that promise. Ronald Isley's journey from prison back to musical relevance represents one of the most remarkable third acts in music history. At an age when most performers have long since retired, he continues to tour, record, and inspire new generations with his extraordinary voice and resilient spirit. His story is a testament to the power of redemption, resilience, and reinvention. Proof that even after the most public falls from grace, there can be revival and restoration. For the man who once sang "It's Your Thing," life after prison has been about reclaiming his thing, his voice, his legacy, and his future, with wisdom earned through hardship and humility learned through loss. 7 decades, from Shout in 1959 to streaming success in the 2020s, Ronald Isley's voice has been a constant in American music, a thread of soulful continuity through changing times, tastes, and technologies. His journey, from church choir to global fame, from luxury to prison cell, from disgrace to redemption, contains all the elements of a classic American narrative. It's a story of extraordinary talent, human frailty, and the capacity for renewal that defines the human spirit. When we talk about the architects of American popular music, The Isley Brothers must be central to that conversation, explains music historian Dr. James Wilson. Their influence spans R&B, rock, funk, soul, and hip-hop. They've been sampled by hundreds of artists, covered by everyone from the Beatles to Kendrick Lamar. Few artists can claim such a broad and enduring impact. Ronald's voice, that distinctive instrument capable of both raw power and tender vulnerability, has been the constant throughout the group's evolution. From the gospel-infused energy of Shout to the smooth seduction of Between the Sheets, his vocals have defined the Isley sound across generations. For those who follow celebrity tax cases, Ronald's sentence was notably severe. 3 years for a 65-year-old nonviolent offender with health issues surprised many legal observers. Some have suggested that the government wanted to make an example of him precisely because of his prominence. Today, at 81 years old, Ronald Isley continues to perform and record. His voice, remarkably preserved, still captivates audiences worldwide. The man once known as inmate number 38,699-060 has reclaimed his identity as one of music's most enduring voices. His journey reminds us that human stories rarely follow neat arcs of rise and fall. They're messy, complicated narratives of triumph and failure, wisdom and foolishness, strength and vulnerability, often all at once. The legacy of Ronald Isley is not just in the timeless recordings that will outlive us all, but in the example of resilience he has set, proving that even after the most public failures, there can be restoration, renewal, and the chance to write new chapters in one story. For the boy from Cincinnati, who once sang in church choirs, who created some of the most enduring music in American history, who fell from grace and found his way back, the song truly does go on. As we conclude our journey through the remarkable life of Ronald Isley, we're left with a story that transcends simple categorization. It's not merely a tale of musical genius, nor is it just a cautionary narrative about financial mismanagement. It's a profoundly human story about talent and frailty, success and failure, fall and redemption. From those early days in Cincinnati, singing gospel in church choirs, to becoming the voice behind some of music's most enduring classics, Ronald's gift has touched millions of lives. Songs like Shout, Twist and Shout, It's Your Thing, That Lady, and Between the Sheets aren't just hits, they're cultural touchstones, the soundtrack to countless memories across generations. His journey reminds us that even the most gifted among us face challenges and make mistakes. Ronald's tax evasion wasn't just a financial error. It represented a disconnect between the disciplined artist who could create timeless music and the man who struggled with the practical responsibilities of his success. Artists often focus on creating, not managing, explains financial advisor David Chen. They're trained to perfect their craft, not to understand tax codes or financial planning. This disconnect has derailed many brilliant careers. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of Ronald Isley's story is what happened after his fall from grace. Many careers have ended with much less public humiliation than a prison sentence at age 65. Yet, Ronald emerged from incarceration not diminished, but somehow enhanced. His voice imbued with new depth, his performances with new meaning. There's something about going through fire that either destroys you or refines you, notes cultural critic Dr. Elaine Robinson. For Ronald Isley, prison seems to have been a refining fire. He came out stronger, more focused, more authentic. His story offers lessons for us all about the importance of financial responsibility, certainly, but more profoundly about resilience, about facing consequences with dignity, and about the possibility of reinvention at any age. For artists, His journey underscores the critical importance of managing the business side of creativity, of surrounding oneself with trustworthy advisors, and maintaining transparency with financial obligations. For fans, it reminds us that our musical heroes are human, capable of extraordinary achievements, but also subject to human failings and weaknesses. And for anyone who has faced failure or disgrace, Ronald Isley's third act offers hope, evidence that it's possible to acknowledge mistakes, pay the price, and still write new chapters in life's story. Today, Ronald Isley continues to perform and record, his voice remarkably preserved, his spirit unbroken by the challenges he's faced. The legacy he and his brothers created continues to influence new generations of artists and listeners. His journey from church choir to prison cell to elder statesman of soul encompasses the full spectrum of human experience, the heights of creative achievement and the depths of public disgrace, the warmth of adoration and the cold reality of consequences. In the end, Ronald Isley's story is about the enduring power of the human voice, not just the remarkable instrument that has created so much beautiful music, but the deeper voice of resilience that speaks to us through his journey. It tells us that we are more than our mistakes, that redemption is possible, and that even after the most profound falls, we can rise again. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the extraordinary life of Ronald Isley. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What's your favorite Isley Brothers song? Do you think Ronald's prison sentence was fair? I'd love to hear your perspective. Until next time, this is R&B Daily, celebrating the complex, inspiring stories behind the music we love.